Hi, boys and girls. Welcome back for some more chapters of Super Gifted. Chapter 21, Super Supportive, #tagger. Okay, here's my deep, dark secret. My arm was fine. I hadn't felt any pain for weeks. I was totally ready to go back to the lacrosse team. So what was the problem? I guess I was scared. Not of re-injuring it. Lax was a tough game, but I was a tough guy. At least I thought I was. The thing was that the Hornets were on a winning streak. They were playing like champions, and without me, their captain. What if I came back and we started losing? It wasn't impossible, you know. That kind of consistency game after game, no way it could last forever. But if my return put us on a skid, no one would see it that way. They'd think it was my fault, period. Because I was a showboat or a ball hog or even a jinx. Because I put my shoulder pads left side first instead of right and somehow offended the lacrosse gods. Sports fans could be crazy superstitious that way. Or, and this one really hurt, people might say it was because I had never been as good as I thought I was. So I stayed on the disabled list. I hadn't worn the sling in a while. People would have seen through that in a heartbeat. I sat on the bench with the players, giving them advice and encouragement. I wasn't an athlete exactly, but I was definitely part of the team, only in a support role. Athletic supporter. That didn't sound so good, but you get the point, right? I was being supportive the way the cheerleaders are. Funny, I'd never appreciated the cheerleaders before this season. I always thought of them as kind of an accessory for the players, like cool uniforms. You know, something to make us look good. But they were supporters too. They had a coach, they held tryouts, they practiced every bit as much as the players did. They developed routines the way the Hornets worked on new plays. Megan had always tried to tell me these things, but I guess I never listened. It was the Eugenator who made me take the cheerleader seriously. And it wasn't just because he was the super kid, although that was a big deal. Being friends with a real life hero wasn't something that happened every day. Uke may not have had a superpower, but that was what made him so awesome. At first glance, he had less than nothing going for him, yet against all odds, he was the best of all of us. The super kid, sure, but so much more. Watching Uke as a cheerleader was like watching a caterpillar change into a butterfly. From my spot on the sidelines, I had a front row seat for that. Okay, he was never going to be fantastic like Megan and some of the girls. Remember, though, Noah used to be the dweeb, shrimp, goober, stink bug klutz who knocked down the human pyramid and sent Vanessa to the emergency room. Back then, he reminded me of Beyblade or maybe the Tasmanian Devil, a spinning instrument of destruction that flattened everything in its path. Now he was steady on his feet. He moved in time with the cheers. When there was music, he kept the beat. He was fine. Despite the fact that Uke had saved her life, Megan definitely did not agree. If that's fine, I'd hate to see what you call terrible. She was just about the only person in town who didn't appreciate the super kid. Come on, Megan, I argued. Give the guy a little credit. He used to be a disaster. Now he isn't anymore. You've got to appreciate that. It's easy to be good at something when you've got natural ability. But when you're really, really stink, you have to work hard and never give up and finally get to be just so-so. That takes commitment. That's what it takes to be a hero. She glared at me. Oh, please. He's only so-so because I changed our routines to keep him at a safe distance, she snarled, and gave him things to do that even he couldn't screw up. Have a heart, Megan. He's a great guy. And not just because he saved your life. Might have saved my life, she corrected through clenched teeth. Look, I said, I made fun of him too. I hit his pants in gym class, the whole 9 yards. And I was wrong. Just because he's weird and skinny and kind of funny looking and talks like an encyclopedia doesn't mean he isn't as good as anybody. And you know what else? I like him. She rolled her eyes. Newsflash, you're the president of his fan club. If you had a magic wand, you'd turn yourself into him. Not true. Look at yourself. You're even standing like him, hunched over, your head hanging, your knees bent. I am not. Look. She whipped out her makeup compact and held up the mirror. Oh man, she was right. I threw my shoulders back, stuck out my chest, and straightened my legs. Well, so what? When you make friends with somebody, you each pick up some of each other's habits. Come to think of it, I've been noticing a lot of kids, boys and girls, looking like that. Round shoulders, kind of stooped. It had to be Uke. Not only did we see him around school, but his picture was displayed in store windows. And he was constantly in newspapers and on TV, especially the Russ Tressman Hour. He was like a fashion statement, you know? When some celebrity does something and everybody starts to copy it, I called it the Yuki look. The funny part was that Noah didn't have the Yuki look so much anymore. As he got better at cheerleading, he also was standing up straighter. It's from Marine training, he explained when I asked about it. You had to love that guy. It was like everything else he said. He might have been joking, but who could tell? Maybe he was talking about some military stuff he found on YouTube. If there was one thing the Yukinator liked more than cheerleading, it was YouTube. I used to think that I was popular because I was an athlete and I hung out with all the right girls and the cool people. But Uke was the opposite of that. An oddball loner who nobody really knew and didn't have any friends except maybe that loser Donovan Curtis. And true, people only noticed him because he got famous. But that was a while ago. At first people liked Uke because he was a super kid. Now we liked him because he was Uke. Soon the governor would be coming to town to honor him. Governor Holland never visited Hardcastle before, not even when he was running for office. But in a few short days, he'd be in our cafeteria giving our Yukinator a medal. That was going to be epic. Chapter 22, Super Revealing, Megan Mercury. Ms. Torres always taught us that there was a cheer to cover every situation. Your team was down by 50 points. E for effort, that's how we do. We are so proud of you. Pouring rain for the entire game. Weatherman, you're no good. The bleachers were on fire. EMT for you and me. Let's all hear it for the VFD. She was wrong. There was no cheer, no chant, no routine for a situation where the entire world was upside down. On Saturday, Governor Holland was coming to Hardcastle to hang a medal on Noah. It started out as a celebration for just our school, but once people got Mayor De Silva and Superintendent Schultz got wind of it, the whole town was involved. Decorating the cafeteria had become an obsession. No classwork had been done for days. All anybody had to say was, can we make more streamers or posters or paper chains for Saturday? And the teachers would be off to the art room for supplies. Seriously, Earth could have had an extra rainforest if it weren't for all the construction paper we used. As I walked through the halls, Noah's face beamed at me from every wall. My school, where I'd been head cheerleader since 6th grade, host of the best pool party every spring, I used to be somebody in this school. Now I was just the almost victim the super kid had saved, and the most important thing about me was that my house had been there to allow him to become super. Could you do a cheer for insanity? Give me an I, give me an N. No, nothing to cheer about here. On Friday, the Hornets won their 11th straight lacrosse game, breaking a school record and taking first place in the county. And did anyone congratulate the players or the coach or the goalie who had a shutout or Zane who scored 4 goals? Of course not. Instead, the Hornets stormed the sidelines and hoisted up the super kid on their shoulders for a victory lap. And while that was going on, the rest of my squad cheered louder than they had during the actual game. That was the final straw. Oh, please, I exclaimed in disgust. You act like he's personally responsible for the 11-game winning streak. He's never touched a lacrosse stick in his life. And if he did, he wouldn't know which end to hold. He's a cheerleader like the rest of us, except that we're good and he's hopeless. They didn't like that. Vanessa stood right up to me. You're the one who always told us that school spirit is just as important as physical ability. Well, Noah has more spirit than anybody. And he definitely gets the crowd excited, Kelsey added, which is every cheerleader's main job. Noah's a great cheerleader, Vanessa insisted. Maybe he didn't start out with mad skills, but he's worked really hard, and you give him no credit at all. Fine, I conceded. He isn't as clumsy as he used to be. That's not saying much. No one is as clumsy as he used to be. Sure, he improved, only because it's impossible to be less than 0. You're wrong, Vanessa said seriously. He could be as good as any of us. You've written him out of all the big routines. Most of the time, he's just cheering by himself 30 feet away, where he can't do any harm. I pointed to her nose. You know that better than anybody. She shook her head. Where he'll never be able to show that he's on our level, because you won't give him the chance. The last time I gave him a chance, he nearly took your head off. She looked me straight in the eye. "You always told us that cheerleading was legit as any sport, that it took just as much ability and drive and commitment. Well, Noah's more driven and committed than any of us. He's ready to show that he's got the ability, only you won't let him. I'll bet you're not even that grateful to him for saving your life." "Hey, no one can be sure that I would have," I protested. But Vanessa had already turned her back on me and joined the other cheerleaders, who swarmed around the players toting Noah. It was the biggest celebration of the season so far, and I wasn't part of it. Her words haunted me. Was it true? Was I really so blind where Noah was concerned? Okay, he'd gotten better. I never said he hadn't. But he sure wasn't falling all over the place anymore. His posture was straighter. His balance was decent. There was a level of confidence in his movements. Was he as good as Vanessa and the others believed? And I was just too biased against him to see it? It was impossible to tell. I didn't watch him on the sidelines, mostly because I wanted to pretend he wasn't there. So you couldn't go by me, but you couldn't go by the others either. They were such Super Kid fans that they thought everything he did was perfection. I needed an impartial judge, but who? My eyes found Noah in the swirling festivity. He was reaching down from his perch on everybody's shoulder to high-five Katie Patterson in the first row. I saw that it wasn't Katie's palm he was slapping. It was the tiny hand of a very young baby in Katie's arms. It hit me. Katie was Noah's private cheer coach. However much he'd improved, it had to be thanks to her. She had a better sense of Noah's true ability. Could I trust her opinion? One thing that settled it for me, Katie was a fellow cheerleader, a fellow head cheerleader. Sure, she was an adult now. Once you carried the pom-poms, it was a sisterhood. I didn't know where she lived, but Donovan was in the school directory. He'd tell me where to find her. It was Saturday morning. At 1 o'clock, the entire town of Hardcastle was squeezing into our cafeteria to watch Governor Holland hanging a medal around Noah's pencil neck. At 10:30, though, the day looked totally normal. Nice, even sunny, not too hot. Cheerleaders live for weather like this. 3 cheers for Mother Nature! But there was no game today. My mission began at the Curtis house so Donovan could point me in the direction of his sister Katie, the klutz whisperer. She was the magician who had supposedly made a cheerleader out of the clumsiest dolt ever to hop, skip, and faceplant across a sports field. I rang the bell at Donovan's address. From inside, I heard a couple of dogs barking. Finally, the door opened, and I was startled when Katie herself appeared. She looked kind of frazzled, holding a pacifier into her baby's mouth. Yesterday, I hadn't realized how young the kid was, a newborn practically. "You live here?" I blurted. She nodded. "Temporarily, until my husband gets a long-term assignment. Megan, right?" "Right," I said, thrilled to be recognized by my one-time hero. She sized me up. "Are you looking for Donnie? He had to go to the academy." "For scholastic distinction?" I finished in amazement. That didn't fit the picture of Donovan I had. You know, the kind of idiot who dive-bombed a pool party from a tree. She grinned. "Yeah, it doesn't sound much like my brother, but he's on the robotics team. The eggheads are doing a demonstration for the governor today, and they're working the last-minute bugs out." "You're the one I actually need to talk to," I told her. She invited me in, and we sat on the couch. The house wasn't a mess exactly, but there was a bassinet in the middle of the living room, an infant swing on the floor, the dog toys scattered everywhere. On the wall was a portrait of Katie in a beautiful white wedding dress and a tall, very good-looking guy in a military uniform, and a smaller picture of a much younger Donovan as a little leaguer. The look on his face seemed to say, "I can think a lot of good uses for this bat, and hitting a baseball isn't any of them." I'd seen that expression on his face more than once. "You've been coaching Noah, right?" I began. "Donnie told me he was a hopeless cheerleader," Katie explained, "so I thought maybe I could help him. But it was a lost cause." "No, he's gotten better." It hurt to say, but I was never going to get to the bottom of this if I couldn't be honest with myself. Some of the girls think he's as good as anybody on the squad. "It wasn't me," Katie admitted. "I couldn't do anything with Noah. That's when my husband took over." "Your husband is a cheerleader?" She shook her head. "He's a tank commander in the Marines. They don't do cheerleading. They march for miles with heavy packs. That's what he and Noah have been doing. It's been like boot camp around this place. Push-ups, sit-ups, jumping jacks, tire flips, you name it." I was blown away. "And it works?" "It must," she replied, "because he was a total loss when I tried to work with him." "Candy, stop chewing on the playpen."